Christopher. How are you?
I'm doing well. I can actually hear you.
Oh my gosh, it's working.
I know. The stars have aligned.
Yeah, they have. How's your day been?
It's been pretty good. How about yours?
Pretty good. I'm still in Pennsylvania. I kind of got sick yesterday after doing like a paranormal investigation, but
Uh-oh.
I'm going back. I'm coming back to Massachusetts in the morning, so I'm
There
looking
you
forward
go.
to that.
That's cool. That's cool. How was the investigation?
You know
Aside from
what?
being sick, obviously. I mean.
So I've been to this location before, by myself last
Okay.
year, which was pretty crazy. And there was a lot of activity, but this time I had Thomas and Stacia, my spiritual parents, go ahead and come with me, and they got to see some of the crazy activity. So it was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So today we have Navi Sosa, who's a dear friend of mine, an amazing practitioner, and I love the way that he thinks, and I'm so glad he's with us. So, yeah, let's bring
I'm
him up.
excited. Let's do it.
Hello, Raven. Hello, Chris. Nice
Hello,
to
how
meet
are
you.
you?
Good.
How are you tonight?
I'm doing pretty decent, and thank you again for having me back.
We're happy to have you back. Hello. So, to begin with tonight, we wanted to talk a little bit about the Alexandrian witchcraft and anything else that comes up. Christopher does not know you as well as I do, so I'm going to let Christopher start with any questions he might have.
Honestly, I'm just kind of like I said. We've never met in person or even virtually, so I would just like to know, like, what's your thought process on spirituality? Like, what's your background? Where you come from? How did you develop into what you practice now?
Well, that is a broad and
So,
convoluted backstory because by crooked crossing paths, we all get to where we are. Um, So, as a child, I was raised in what I call a Sicilian Catholic home, which meant we attended church religiously. We recognized the validity of the sacraments, the saints, all that. But on a family level, as well as a cultural level, we also did things that would be recognizable as folk magic, divination, spirit conjuration, or spirit communication, dream interpretation, and the like, with a little bit of subversive Gnostic influences, such as believing that the Virgin Mary as God's mom is far more important than the thing that came out from between her legs, for lack of a more civilized way to put it. So growing up, spiritual experiences and magical practice were the norm. They were perfectly acceptable as long as we didn't necessarily broadcast it. In my family, they liked calling it the things we did, or the things we do, or the old custom. However, culturally and religiously, we would have identified as Catholic. And usually in my family, with up to my great grandparents who immigrated here from Sicily and southern Italy, the family members that did have those predilections, like everyone can practice folk magic, but the people that were really drawn to it or really good at it, were usually marked or sent or encouraged to pursue a holy life as either a nun, monk, or priest. And that was initially my mindset when I was 9 years old. And everyone was saying, oh, you are definitely going to be a member of the priesthood or some kind of holy orders. We can just tell. Except for several things. During my teen years, Chris, you'll have to excuse random noises. I have a chaos gremlin kitten that is exploring all the wires and
No worries.
uh,
I too have a very rebellious cat at the house, and he likes to cause havoc and mayhem. So it's all good.
awesome. Um, so I was dealing with some health issues, most of which were including or tied in with gender and sexuality, um, that were not really acceptable in a Roman Catholic catechism based environment,
Mhm.
as well as in the heavily Republican community of Portsmouth, Rhode Island, where I was
Mhm.
in high school. Unfortunately, adding to that pressure, um, my high school peers, I might not necessarily have been woke up one day and going, "Hey, I'm a flaming queen," but they could tell like that I did not fit the bill of a cis het football bra. So I was bullied mercilessly. Um, and it all came to a head where I attempted my own life. I will spare details because I don't want to trigger anyone in the comments, but it was very life shattering in a positive way when a woman just appeared in the same room and gave me a choice saying, essentially, I've been around your family forever, but you can choose now. You can either die without dignity or you can build a life on your terms. I chose the latter because I had realized that I was serious, but it was not the right decision for me. Um, and so she smiled, and then particular markings that had been done to my body then immediately healed, which was very like freaky, but also kind of like, oh wow, that's impressive. Initially, I thought she was an aspect of the Virgin Mary or one of countless saints, but none of them looked like her that I could find in iconography. And then I stumbled upon a book on Greek and Roman mythology, and there she was. Um, so I began as a teeny bopper, kind of on one hand, creating like a homegrown dual faith practice where still very devout Catholic, but also honoring the Greek and Roman deities, or like talking to them and praying to them because I was having experiences with them. But on the other side, I was also going, well, maybe this Catholic Christian mindset and fundamentalist look bullshit and prejudice of the area I was living in, maybe this is not a good fit for me because everyone is saying if you want to be a good Christian, you can't be gay and you can't dare color outside of the arbitrary lines we associate with what flaps of skin are between our legs. And so I began a study of comparative religion, delving into all denominations, all religious traditions, East and West. And I discovered Wicca and neo-paganism at that time and started. I like saying that 1990s Llewellyn era books are the starter drug for living an occult life in America, because almost everyone has cut their teeth on one of those books, whether it's by Scott Cunningham, Silver Ravenwolf, etc., etc. But it didn't feel like home. And when I was 18, I discovered Reconstructionist paganism, classical polytheism, where it was trying to adopt the mindset and adapt the practices as it was in antiquity, but relevant to modern living, with the Greek and Roman deities. And I really resonated with that approach, except Reconstructionists, especially Greek and Roman ones, tend to have the weird relationship with magic and divination, where most of them influenced by Aristotle. Seriously, fuck Aristotle. They view it as either subversive or really not something you want to proudly claim or actively practice, other than taking augury to see if your offerings were accepted or interpret the will of the gods. So I started going back to eclectic Wicca, or more accurately, Wicca adjacent, because all of the popular books that came out in the 1990s ongoing were pretty much outer court, so non-initiatory, a pre-initiatory training circle material that was devised by Ed Fitch, Edmund Basinski, Herman Slater, and Donna Cullen, countless others, for a non-oath-bound paganism, because so many people wanted to worship the goddess and maybe do folk magic, but they didn't necessarily know if the priesthood was right for them, or if initiatory oaths were right for them. And so you see a lot of people taking that material, which is beautiful material, but it was not it was valid neo-paganism, but it was not an ancient tradition, nor was it something really grounded in academic fact, because you have a lot of people coming up with tall tales about, oh, the Pleiadian aliens, or the She, or my great grandma 3 times removed, who never existed, gave me this pseudo archaic tradition that is verbatim from Ed Fitch's Grimoire of Shadows. But you see a lot of that outer court material being adapted and spun off and evolving into very viable traditions in their own right. Unfortunately, many of the publications and authors who got big at that time, and sometimes still are highly esteemed and respected in the published world, they tend to frame things in a rampant, do as you feel blender religion, instead of an eclecticism founded on established roots or like a framework. So I kind of was in a hard place going, well, I don't want vapidity. I don't want a craft without its bite. I want something that is very deep and meaningful. And I am called to a variety of priesthood. I don't know why. I've always felt that. But my encounter or experience of Wicca at that point was that Wiccan adjacent, where everything was harm none, threefold law, and all gods are one god, all goddesses are one goddess, and saccharine, sugary bullshit that vanishes as soon as shit gets real. So I didn't know what the fuck to do. I then discovered Italian traditional witchcraft, which I'm like, hey, this is a lot of what my own family was doing. And Italian folkloric traditions exist in both initiatory priesthoods who preserve survivals and aspects of various mystery cults and philosophies of the ancient world as adapted through the years, both for the needs of the time as well as to survive, much like the Afro-diasporic traditions, by hiding under merry skirts and syncretizing with dual faith allegiance, acknowledging the saints as masked for deities or what have you. And then you also have the more secular practice or the operative practices of folk magic that they might nominally be framed in terms of petitioning the saints and novenas, but ultimately anyone can do it. And the core tech is rooted in that Neolithic era animism that is the bedrock of all religion and all magic. And so you can do it as an atheist, you can do it as an agnostic, you can do it as a Catholic, as a pagan, as a Buddhist, as long as you as long as you respect and abide by that Italian or Italian-American cultural matrix when you're doing those things. And then I bumped into, on a networking site, a woman who was the head of a coven practicing Sicilian initiatory witchcraft, blended with a lot of those popular neo-pagan Wiccan adjacent elements, because tech is tech, and a lot of folkloric traditions during the 60s and 70s, on one hand, they didn't necessarily have a framework or a rubric to pass those ways outside of family or regional context. So the Wiccan coven structure, degree structure, even having like the eightfold Sabbath cycle as a like scheduled calendar or holy calendar, as opposed to, well, in my family we had 28 festivals of the year, your family says there's 40, and yours and Ravens just has one because they like to party and get shit-faced on New Year's and excuse it as being a religious holiday. No offense, Raven.
None taken.
So it kind of helped, especially in America, especially in areas with high immigrant populations and a lot of multicultural exchange, like New York City, like Boston, like New Orleans, like the West Coast. So you saw a lot of adoption of this tech and these concepts as a way to adopt outsiders into the family or into that structure, and respect both ways. Additionally, during the 70s and 80s, if you do not look and sound like you were Wiccan adjacent, meaning you didn't cast a circle, you didn't celebrate 8 Sabbats, you didn't have degrees, you didn't have a coven structure or a solitary practice informed by a coven, rubric, if you didn't have any of that,
Mhm.
no one took you fucking seriously.
Mm.
And so if you wanted to talk with anyone, especially in New York, especially in Boston, especially in New Orleans, well, New Orleans is different because they did have the New Orleans voodoo and spiritualist churches
Sure.
that sheltered magical practitioners, but other than the Aphrodite spirit traditions, if you had a folkloric way or a path or craft, no one in the pagan community would fucking talk to you unless you looked and acted the way everyone else was doing. Which is also another criticism many Reconstructionists have had with regards to the neo-pagan community, because many people operate as if there is one god, one goddess, and everyone has a Wiccan read equivalent, and everyone operates in a certain way. And Reconstructionists are like, well, A, no, but B, also no. So I pursued training within that person's coven and hived off after several years of practice, intense study, and training, and receiving the rites of passage therein. Um, and then, like, every person that hives off and forms their own group, whether it's a paranormal investigation group or a coven or a grove or temple or a meetup, after hiving off and being on my own for and having my own seekers approach me, starting teaching my own students, I realized I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Please help me. Um, so I reached out to my elders and the other kin in my Sicilian craft upline, and I started being mentored by them and gaining an appreciation both for each of those individuals' experiences and the wisdom born from those experiences, as well as really getting a glimpse of folkloric Italian witchcraft behind the scenes, where publicly, yes, we adopted a lot of Wiccan neo-pagan adjacent lore or terminology and technology, but after a certain point, you also really appreciated the indigenous traditions of the motherland that had either been preserved and survived or that had been recreated, whether that recreation was in the 1800s or the 1900s when we exchanged the island of Sicily, Sardinia, Malta, and the boot of Italy for New England, etc., with its own spirits, with its own power, with its own protocols of being in right relationship with the spirits of the place. And I started really evaluating my current practice and deriving and ultimately birthing my own lineage or recension or family identity as someone who is teaching and working within that greater umbrella term. That said, I would not be the witch, the practitioner, the priestess that I am today without the influence, mentorship, and counsel and occasional bitch slap if it was out of line, and the embodied practice of those who have preceded me, who taught me, who trained me. They're very much people I consider family and heart kin, especially um, I'm not dropping names in order to kiss ass, but just to acknowledge the gift that I received. I want to just thank Lori Bruno, Marion Dennis Kirkpatrick, and others of my upline for helping shape the spicy deliciousness that is Navi. Um, during at the same time, after several moves, I found myself in New Mexico, living with a friend who had been an initiate of Mary Nesnick's Algard tradition. And while every lineage and every branch of initiatory craft is different, in her understanding of her oaths, she had, even though she no longer practiced in that tradition, even though she had been drawn to and was reviving a particular Hellenic craft tradition relevant to the needs of her group and place, her interpretation of her oaths said that before you can lay down your obligations or act of service to those mysteries, you needed to initiate and train someone to carry it forward. And she had not initiated anyone after she had spun off from her mother group. So I was intrigued. And we had worked together very, very well. And she cross-trained and initiated me in a very clandestine and informal way. Very valid, but she was initiated during the 70s and 80s, and she had literally walked out of a ritual because, as was current in that particular time, in certain factions of the community, they wanted, or they had broken their word to her, which isn't traditional. Don't break your word. But they surprised her. Previously, they had said, once you reach third degree, you don't have to do sexual induction. We can do the great rite in token symbolically, which is perfectly valid and mainstream. But they surprised her and she said, yeah, nope, you broke your word, fuck you. And then she walked off. So she also had like very weird feelings about her initiators, which are perfectly valid. But because of that, I never really was public about my foundation in that particular lineage of Wicca.
Okay.
I loved the teachings. They were beautiful and powerful. However, I didn't want to claim it publicly, even though initiates of Alexandrian and Gardnerian traditions that I love and trust treated me as a valid initiate because I knew all the things, granted with some lineage-specific nuances. And I kind of just left it on the table for several years, focusing on my Sicilian craft practice and my amazing family and spiritual children, for lack of a better term. And also at the time, I was in my own way spiteful to the British traditional Wiccan community, because at the time when I was living in New England, the other than my friends who had all moved away elsewhere from the area, everyone else that was a valid but above ground public initiate was a very transphobic or otherwise problematic douche bro or twat waffle. And I just didn't have time for that, even though at the time I had not necessarily come out as non-binary and trans myself.
Mhm.
It just, I can understand preserving a rubric out of respect for tradition, but for me, tradition has never been about worshiping fossils or leftover ash. It's about carrying on the flame and feeding it. And sometimes you don't have the fuel used to feed that fire back in wherever. Sometimes you need to adapt.
Mhm.
That said, as I came to terms with and really embraced and come into my gender identity, my sexuality, and also as I began just dipping toes back in the proverbial community, it's popular to cross initiate, it's popular to have your feet in multiple magical traditions in the greater subculture. And I really began receiving a call from the god and the goddess of the Wicca and the spirits of that initiatory tradition again. But I was hesitant, and life was life, and I was adulting so hard that I didn't really have time to figure out what the hell that meant.
Mm.
Fast forward to several years ago, and I was talking with um, a dear friend who had recently hived off within the Alexandrian tradition, and I mentioned casually, yeah, I'm really feeling a call to kind of dust this off, and I want to be redone and retrained, not to discredit what I had learned with Cindy in New Mexico, but also I wanted to just respect that this is something pure and sincere. And also, I have in recent years been really embracing that concept of beginner's mind and going back to basics or the core foundation. And I've been
Mhm.
doing that in all the various paths and traditions that I myself have a foot in. Um, and so we had a very candid discussion, and they and the wonderful woman who was their high priestess in their new group initiated me, and I am still currently training and working towards elevation because adulting is hard and life is a dumpster fire right now for many of us. But also, I really want to savor the experience. I really want to nurture that foundation. And as I did with my Sicilian elders, I would like to thank them for bringing me across the threshold into the Alexandrian tradition. Oracle and Moon Bear, you're amazing. If you happen to catch a listen to this podcast. That said, because Raven had mentioned wanting to talk about Alexandrian Wicca, I can only speak firstly of my experience of that. And while I can reference some of my Algard background because I was elevated to the sublime degree there, in Alexandrian Wicca, I'm only first degree. And if you want to speak specifically about broader Alexandrian issues other than my own experience and perspective and nuances, I would defer to reaching out to my own upline, my own initiators. Or I could recommend others who are more qualified than I to speak for the tradition. But that is my convoluted spiritual biography in a nutshell, Chris. Thank you for asking.
Hey, no problem. I mean, what I'm hearing, it sounds like you have a very rich history. You have a very strong passion for, the inner workings, and like I said, the history of all this stuff, where it comes from, how it works, why it works, things like that. Your likes and dislikes. I mean, you covered a lot, and you really know your stuff. When I respect that highly, I just want you to know that.
Thank you
Um,
so much.
I also have to say, I'm really glad you're still here. Truly, like
Thank you.
I am a survivor of a very similar thing, and keep fighting that good fight. Just because we need
Um,
people like you in the world. So stay with us. And I'm glad you are here with us. So I really wanted to express that. Okay.
Thank you so
Um,
much. Spinning
you're very
off,
welcome.
spinning off of that, my initiator Oracle did promise me that my Alexandrian priesthood would be filled with chai, chocolate, and the pleasure of pissing off bigots. So that's been a great motivation to me for my mental health. But thank you so much, Chris.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Did you have any questions, Raven?
Well, first off, I want to second that. I'm very happy you're here because I never would have met you. I got the pleasure of meeting Navi when Navi was doing a talk on angels, and um, some of the things that he expressed within the class that he did at our at the store that I'm at, Pentagram,
Mhm.
um, hit marks that really hit home for me. And so here's this beautiful, wonderful energy that I just see this light coming from, that I'm like, I really want to get to know this person more, that has so much knowledge. I never would have had that experience if you weren't here. So I'm very happy you're here. Um, my question would be, how has the tradition itself, like, can you give me an example of one thing? I'm trying to figure out how to word this. Give me a moment.
Okay.
How has the tradition helped you discover things within yourself that has helped you to grow outside of the metaphysical tradition itself? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So, in general, like all across the board, both as an initiate of Sicilian folkloric traditions and as an initiate of the Wicca, um, initiation always requires a challenge, an ordeal. Many during the 1990s and early 2000s like framing it in terms of Jung's concept of facing your shadows,
Mm.
um, which very, very valid, but nowadays the term shadow work has gotten so commodified and gentrified that that correlation is not as close as mayhaps it once was. Um, But you cannot face the threshold of initiation. You cannot answer those challenges without radically changing your entire life, and radically improving your life. If we look at the ancient mystery cults of Eleusis, Samothrace, Dionysus, etc., yes, there were the mystical, spiritual benefits of initiation, um, a better experience of the afterlife, becoming one with the gods, and the like, as well as a direct ear, whereas everyone else had to, that was outside of the mysteries, had to approach the gods from a very devotional and very, very humble place, whereas as initiates, you had been adopted as in ancient times, so now into the direct family of those gods, and so had closer access. Leaving that aside, initiation into the ancient mysteries also was credited with moral improvement, with greater self-awareness, as well as blessings of luck, health, happiness. There is a saying, though it is sometimes hard to believe, that the gods and goddesses never let their initiates starve. There will always be, sometimes at the last minute, some intervention of food, shelter, clothing, and support provided if you maintain your oaths. So there is that, and that experience from antiquity does match and correlate well with my own experience and witnessing the effects of my initiatory work in the greater, in my greater life and in the greater world. Also, as initiates of a magical tradition as opposed to just a mystery tradition, the technology of working the magical art effectively is very empowering, because it gives you the power to choose. It gives you the power to choose again if the consequences of your initial choice put you in the crossroads again. But at the same time, while I really, really take issue with and will never hesitate to call out the toxic positivity and prosperity gospel bullshit that is very popular in American society nowadays, but also manifests very abusively in New Age spirituality, where, heaven forbid, you have an intrusive thought of, I want to throat punch this person. Or, heaven forbid, you have a bad day because your dog died, your mom is in hospice, and you just lost your job all in 2 hours. Heaven forbid you have shit that requires serious work to get out of, because you got to keep love and light positivity to manifest your reality. That's abuse. That is gaslighting yourself and discrediting yourself to give away your power, to give away your agency, if you really think about it. And unfortunately, because of its popularity in the New Age movement, you also see some witches and neo-pagans who are not, they might be valid initiates of eclectic systems based on either Wiccan, neo-paganism derivative, or other traditions, or cobbled together from personal research. But if you don't have I'm not saying that the secrets protected by oath are radically life altering, because they are, but they aren't, because many of those secret teachings are very, very simple, very, very shocking in how concise and also how irrelevant to things they sometimes seem. But they're seeds that are planted in your psyche that, if you nurture them and do the work, they might not in themselves be the change that remakes your world, but they are definitely the breath exhale that stirs the wind that sets your boat sailing on the oceans, as it were. So, toxic positivity, spiritual materialism, prosperity gospel bullshit aside. And again, if you are telling survivors of abuse to quit your bitching and start your witching, you are a bully and a twat waffle and a shit weasel who needs to probably take the crystal obelisk out of your ass and mayhaps stop talking and stop breathing. That said, magic is real and has real effects. So you have the power to change things, whether it's the power to go, yeah, this was a bad decision. I'm going to make a decision to get the hell out of Dodge and change the scenario, or the decision to finally go to therapy and address your shit and hold yourself accountable, or whether it's the choice to go out of your body and give a certain politician who is a Cheeto-haired wannabe dictator chronic nightmares and bedwetting through astral manipulation to better your life and the lives of others, or whether it's doing a spell to open doors of opportunity for job options, for money, for love, for health and healing, or whether it's the choice to conjure a spirit to ask questions and gain insight that defy our limited, sensible, mortal experience, or send those same spirits to help those in your life that are in need and that you don't have the option of materially being there, but you can still do magic and pray. That's big magic. And all of those, whether it's psychotherapy, whether it's just putting on your big girl pants and making those tough decisions, whether it's just deciding to slam the door on toxic people, or whether it's magical work or just sheer gumption and working your ass off on a mundane level, choice is magic. Every word we speak, every thought we think is a spell and potential. And when we back up those choices, those words, those thoughts with action, with energy, with attention, not intention, but attention, and nurture it, that's the magic of life. That is, when all is said and done, the great work of alchemy. Now, specifically, while there are universal truths in all traditions, there are particular spirits, mysteries, teachings, nuances, contexts that are very specific to each tradition. And my experience of that is ooh, new technology to play with
Hmm.
to improve my life and improve the world. But it's also really sends home the reality that while independence and individuality are certainly sacred and relevant, the concept of being entirely self-made, entirely self-sufficient, entirely isolated and independent, and putting yourself on a throne, pedestal, or ivory tower because you are claiming such, that is a fantasy that we need to discard immediately if we want to save the planet, if we want to improve security and make a more just society. But pursuing initiation and the practice of binding by oath and establishing yourself in relationship intimately with particular spirits, and also the very really human camaraderie and fraternity of affiliation and the support of whichever deities or spirits or collective strengths thereof. It really goes a long way to bring home that everything is interpersonal, that everything is interrelated, interdependent, and that we exist as a result of 1,001 decisions going back to the dawn of time, to the birth of the cosmos, to our ancestors in ancient Greece, Egypt, Central America, other planets, if that is in your worldview. All of those decisions, all those relationships are still inextricably linked, and we depend on them. Even if you grow your own food, you are depending on the sun, on the soil, on the fertilizer that you either shit into a bucket or you purchase from a garden store. All these forces, beings, places, things, factors, energies, circumstances, they're all interpersonal, intersectional, and they all have an effect on everything else. And for me, I find that is very healing, both personally and on a community and global level, in how we maintain relationships and treat others, and how we hope to live as or in accord with our ideals as proper persons and priesthood. Great question.
Awesome. Um, wow, we're already almost at an hour. Chris, do you have any other questions you'd like to ask?
Absolutely. So it's my understanding that you work with angels. Is that correct?
Correct.
So my question along that is, I have I feel like I've connected with people on the other side that talk about being guardian angels for their loved ones, right? Like say it's a grandfather, they or a grandmother, they'll say things to me when I do readings like think of me as a guardian angel, right? My understanding of angels is that they are beings that were never incarnate, very high vibrational beings that were never incarnate. Now correct me if I'm wrong on that, but that's what I've been led to believe. I'm curious what your thoughts are on one, whether angels are beings that have never been incarnate, and two, can loved ones, let's just say beings that were incarnate, can they achieve that level of frequency that angels vibrate at? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So, mindful that I'm going to try to respect time for the show.
I know it's a loaded question. I apologize.
So
I'm smiling because I know some of the stuff that Navi is going to say, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see how you. Okay.
one, oh, sorry. One, it depends entirely on how you define things or what cultural matrix you're talking about.
Sure.
Many of us come or approach angels from a very Christian influenced approach or flavor,
Sure.
where which itself is an outgrowth of Chaldean and Semitic traditions.
hmm
In those systems, angels are beings of smokeless fire, of living light that solely exist to serve the will of the Almighty, however you experience that.
Sure.
However, even in those traditions, we do have stories of the Almighty taking magical practitioners, prophets, or other servants of the people and making them angels, such as the prophet Enoch, who became the archangel Metatron, or
Hmm.
the prophet Elisha, who became the archangel Sandalphon.
Okay.
However, if you go by etymology, our words demon and angel come from the Greek words daimone and angeloi. Angeloi means messenger or an
Oh,
intermediary. Daemon just means a divine spirit. Daemon could be the soul of an ancestor. Um, it could also be your personal guardian spirit. It could also be the spirits of nature. It could also be pre-existent beings of light and fire. It could be a being from anywhere, any place, any time, any orientation. And then you have the angeloi, singular as angelos, who all angels or all angeloi are daemones, but a daemon is only an angelus if and when they are serving as a messenger or an intermediary of force for magical work or carrying prayers to the divine or answering prayers from the divine to mortals or anything that equates to that function. Once that message is delivered, once that text goes through on this cosmic cell phone, they stop being an angel and go back to being a daemon until the next time.
Hmm.
Now, that said, there is in the tradition of the Golden Dawn ceremonial magic, there are interesting teachings concerning that humanity is meant to evolve to become an angelic being, um, or be united with their guardian angel either after death or through spiritual work and initiation. But there are also teachings in the same order that posit angels as having the role of bringing down divine energy into matter, and humanity's role is the equivalent of raising matter up to spirit.
hmm
That said, in Middle Eastern traditions and some European folkloric traditions that are influenced through the Saracens by way of the Crusades and the Renaissance, you do find the concept of fallen angels mating with humanity And on one hand, teaching us the arts of civilization, language, culture, etc. On the other hand, teaching the magical arts and their children being known as the Nephilim, which, depending on how you translate it, could be people of fiery rockets because Zechariah Sitchin, who is a fraud and a huckster, claimed it, or more accurately, the people of the name, the men and women of great renown, or my favorite, the persons of knowledge or the persons of wisdom. They are the first witches or magical workers. In some traditions, they are seen as the root of witch blood or the witch's royal bloodline, much like witches in Ireland trace their descent to the ladies of the Lords of the Sea, much like every witch in ancient Greece was somehow either adopted into the lineage or could trace heredity or ancestry to Polofonte, who was the daughter of Ares and Hecate, and the first screech owl, or the first striga. And so, in that sense, it is possible for angels or their equivalents, or the gods and goddesses, or the jinn, or the she, or what have you, to be ancestors. Whether you want to see this as otherworldly beings taking on form that can affect matter, which is a legitimate magical teaching, and getting our foremothers pregnant, or whether it is a matter of their spirits overshadowing people making love during a sacred ritual, or if they're having sex near a holy place or on a ley line or at a particular astrological conjunction that is conducive to that. So it's worth noting, spinning off or tying in with that concept of witch blood or the royal blood of the Watchers, some idiots like to use it in the greater cult community as a spiritual basis for racism and eugenics. They would be imbeciles and also bigots, which are the same thing. However, even if it was a genetic heritage, even if it was something that could be detected or passed by procreation or by sharing blood with someone, humans like to fuck. Humans have been breeding with other humans of outside of racial or cultural litmus tests since the dawn of Homo erectus. We get around, we travel, we trade. Hey, I will trade you one cowrie shell for your grandma's cookie recipe. And hey, you're pretty fly. Do you want to seal the deal and shaboink? And oh, 9 months later, voila. So that blood pedigree is so watered down as to be irrelevant. Conversely, is now the heritage that unites humanity in a very sacred sense. And it calls us and awakens us to serve the divine and to serve our communities as sovereigns, as sacred kings and sacred queens in our own lives and in our own vocations and lives. but very valid to see angels in that sense or in that stream as being related to ancestors or ancestral reverence. Lastly, last point, the word guardian angel has many different nuances and connotations, and some people use it just to mean a spirit that is protecting you, maybe trying to influence your life for greater good because they like you and has your best interest at heart, sort of like a spirit guide that you do beer runs with and that has your back when shit gets real. In that sense, as a guardian spirit, as a spirit guide, as an ally, even as a familiar spirit, the dead have a very historic tradition dating back to our Neolithic ancestors of being our guardians, guides, and protectors. So, very possible in that context. Great question.
Cool. That was awesome. That actually helped me kind of make sense of a lot of different things, and just it's fascinating to hear different points of view because you always feel like what you're hearing for yourself is one thing, but it's always nice to get different perspectives, you know what I mean, and different avenues for which to kind of grow knowledge. So that's super cool.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Gwen, do you want to go ahead and join us? And forgive me, I had to put my head down. I got really sick yesterday from a paranormal investigation, so I'm still kind of recovering.
Yeah, she wasn't feeling good. You guys, good show. Navi, thank you for coming on. Anything else you guys need to say, or can you tell us who's coming on next week?
Isn't it Morgan that's coming on next week? I'm pretty sure it's Morgan.
I think it is. That's why I was like, hold on, let me look in my book.
I'm excited. I love Morgan. She's great.
I do too. All right, let's see.
While you're looking, Navi, it was an absolute pleasure to get to talk to you and just to get to hear your thoughts on all this cool stuff. I mean, it's just like your stuff, you really do, and it's always a pleasure to talk to somebody who has that wealth of knowledge. So it was a pleasure, truly.
Thank you so much. I'm going to sign off. But it was a pleasure. Thank you again for having me, everyone.
Thank you.
And Chris, pleasure meeting you.
You as well.
Gwen, you're amazing, and I hope you get your sugar daddy. Recipe in the chat room. And Raven, as always, love you, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank
See you
you.
soon, my dear.
Bye, loves.
Bye.
Take care.
That was a lot. A lot to take in. It is. But
right?
You guys, yes, Morgan is coming on next week. Morgan Caldwell, and that is I don't know. She's a good friend, and I can't wait to have her on. She's awesome.
That's going to be a good one.
I can't wait to hear about all her experiences, like just having her as a friend and meeting her in person. She's a very inspiring person, even though she may not see it.
She is, and I've been trying to drag her out of her shell a little bit, but I'm so busy that I tell you, I feel terrible. I tell everybody, if you don't hear from me, message me. I try to do my rounds with all my people and my friends, and I just kind of lose it sometimes.
No worries.
I get a little busy.
C'est la vie, right? That is life. It's all good.
Yeah, that's what I say. If you don't hear from me, message me, because I try, but I do miss a beat sometimes. I
think we all miss a couple of beats here and there. It's all good.
We do.
Oh yeah.
We do. But I was supposed to have shoulder surgery, and the insurance said no, so I'm having to go through physical therapy. So that will be postponed.
I'm sorry.
Come see me in Salem.
I want to very badly, but I'm trying to work on that, and we'll get it together. But next week, Morgan Caldwell, we'll get the ad out very soon. Of course, we always have shows every day except Friday, Saturday, because those are my mental health days that I take for me or travel, either one. But yeah, I love you guys, and Chris, I'm glad you're back and feeling better.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back.
You're welcome. All right, you guys, I'm gonna pop out and you guys say good night. And everybody, thank you for watching.
All right. Well, that was really cool. I loved
That was
having
very
Navi
cool.
come back on.
Yeah.
Honestly, we could have talked for hours and hours, and he would have had more wealth of like knowledge to share. And it would have been amazing. So hopefully we can have him again in the future.
That would be cool. I mean, you want to talk about somebody who knows their stuff. Like, that's impressive. I was like, damn, like, this is, I'm not, like, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. Like, there are some people that just, they know their stuff and they say it briefly, but he went into real depth of the stuff that he was talking about and just the stuff that he knew in his background and history. And it was cool as shit. It really was.
And that's really just the tip of the iceberg.
I know, right? Like, yeah. So
Yeah.
we could have gone a whole nother, 3 or 4 hours probably, and it would have been like still not even scratching the surface of what that man knows. So
Yeah. So, well, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Next week, as was said earlier, we have Morgan Caldwell, and I'm really excited to have her on. And both Christopher and I are friends with her and her boyfriend Nathaniel. So, um, we'll see you guys next week at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And thanks.
yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it.